Hello, welcome to another episode of What Are You Selling with me, David Green. I don't know why I clapped my hands at the start there, but I must be very excited. So that was the only reason for it. With me today is Nathan Tudor, the author of The Emperor's Lion, which came out on January 22nd of this year. So brand new release. We're only at the middle of February, so it's pretty new. So Nathan, thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
No problem. Been looking forward to chatting with you. We meant to chat earlier, but I had to recancel, which was not great. But it's one of those things that had to happen. So we're here. And if you're here for the first time as well, who are watching on YouTube or listening to us across the different amount of podcasts that we have, please do give us a follow and subscribe to us. We have on the channel, we have other interviews with authors. We have live readings from my own work and other people. We're going to have roundtables pretty soon. And we also have the Wheel of Time show, Easing the Reader, as well, which is on here. So do please check those out. So Nathan, how is your day going?
Well, it's about 9 a.m. here in California, so it's an early start to the day, but I think this is a good way to start the day, you know?
Of course it is. Of course it is. The last person I interviewed was also from California, and
Really?
that was 8 o'clock in the morning for them. But they chose that time. I was like, I'll work throughout any time you want to do it, right? I was like, as long as it's not in the middle of the night, I'm good. And they were like, no, 8 o'clock in the morning's fine. I was like, okay.
More power to them.
Yeah, yeah. But that wasn't on a Saturday though, which is for you.
Okay.
This is you.
Right.
This
Yeah.
is very early on a Saturday. So thanks very much for that. So you had this was your debut novel that came out on the 22nd of January.
It is, yeah. I can show you the cover. I'm quite proud of it. So
Yeah, the cover's lovely. Yeah, it's
it's
beautiful.
the zoom effect is blurring it a bit, but yeah.
Yeah. I have it. I have a picture of it here on my phone. So I think it's probably going to do the same thing, but yeah, it's not really getting
Yeah.
on there very well.
Yeah.
But the Empire's
Yeah.
Lion, sorry,
The
and it's a
Empire's
beautiful
Lion.
cover. It's a beautiful cover. I like how it reminds me that I don't know if you're a gamer. I was briefly mentioned the game before here, but there's I had the name was in my head then and now it's gone. There was a game out on the Xbox about 5 years ago that had the same kind of art style to it. I can't remember. I'm gonna have to.
I'm trying to think. I do love games, but I have these just empty sections in my memory where I just like fell out of it for a brief time or just
Yeah.
in case they were set aside. But
Well, obviously, I have an empty bit in my head where I had the name in my head. I was just about
yeah.
to say it, and now it's completely gone. I'm going to as we're chatting, I'm going to look it up because it's going to
Oh,
really,
sure. Yeah.
because it has a beautiful art style. It's like kind of like watercolor pastel kind of thing, which
Hmm.
it stands out. Your cover does stands out quite a lot. But before we start talking about the book, because I've got a lot of things I want to know. It's a big book as well, as you just showed us when you picked it up for a debut one. What are your influences? Who are some of your like series or writers that you would always go to?
Yeah, great question. I mean, and it's a whole range. So in terms of fantasy, some of my go-tos, I talk about Guy Gavriel Kay, especially, the way he blends history and fantasy.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not as strong on the historical one-to-one correspondence as he is. I give myself a bit more leeway with that, but
Right.
I love his prose. I love the inventiveness of it, the way you really feel like the world is alive, but
Yeah.
also, he's got great literary stylings, which I think is something I'd love to see more of in fantasy. So
Right.
he's a great inspiration in that regard. Stephen Erickson's Malazan Book of the Fallen, but I have a funny caveat with that. I think I'm the biggest Stephen Erickson fan who's only read one of his books. And it's
Anyway,
because I keep reading the first one, The Gardens of the Moon, again and again.
yeah.
Because every time I want to move on to Dead House Gates, the second one, I think, okay, well, hang on, I need to refresh my memory. So I've
Well,
read Gardens of the Moon many times.
well, I'll tell you, this will be a little. This might liberate you. You don't need to read Gardens of the Moon before you read Dead House Gates.
Okay.
Because it's completely different characters. It's set in a completely different part of the world, and yeah, you don't need to. You can actually read Deadhouse Gates is a book that I kind of say to people if they want to read Erickson. I'm like, read Deadhouse Gates, and they say, well, it's the second one. And I'm like, yes, it is, but it's one of his best ones. And if you like that one, then go back to the first one and read it through because it's an amazing
Mhm.
book. It's probably and there's other there's other great ones in that series as well, but I'd say the second one is probably his best. But anyway,
All
continue.
right, wow. It's good to know. I'll free myself from the the repeated first book read. And then another big one probably for me was I sort of got into modern epic fantasy through reading Brandon Sanderson books. So I think it's hard to meet someone who hasn't run into Brandon Sanderson at some point. But
Yes, yeah.
um,
Yeah, he's cast his shadow across the entire of fantasy, really,
he
which is
really
funny
has.
because as you were talking about before about styling, like a literal like kind of styling. Um, he's a very kind of, and not as a slight against him, because like some of my work is compared to Brandon Sanderson sometimes, which I find a compliment. But he'd be very kind of a basic kind of writer, where he's very much
Mhm.
like, very, very clean, very, this is the action, this is what's happening. It's easy to kind of follow. Big on
Yeah,
world building, big on
yeah,
magic systems and what have you. But he would be, and I think he, as I said it himself in some of the things that in some of the YouTube videos that he does, that he's like his prose style is very basic on purpose.
yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
and I suppose that's why he's so popular.
Yeah, I think I've watched those videos as well. So
Yeah.
that's probably another reason why I would say, I have some influence from there is because as a young writer growing up, it's like, how do I learn to write? And then, oh, look, one of my favorite authors has a sci-fi fantasy writing series on YouTube. I'll check
Yeah.
that out. So,
Yeah, they're really good videos as well. And his I don't know where he gets the time from, but then I've seen, he does so much. Like he writes so much. Like he's got multiple books out a year, and his books are big books as well. But he does like so many podcasts and so many videos. But then I've seen him doing the video podcast where he's literally doing all of his book signings while he's doing
yeah,
them. So
he's
multitasking.
he's a force in his own right.
He
So,
is, yeah, he is. Yeah,
right
I found Brandon Sanderson through Wheel of Time actually because it was
Mhm.
I'd heard about Mistborn a little bit after it came out, but I hadn't got around to checking it out. And then when he was announced as taking over the Wheel of Time series, I was like, oh, I'll go and check him out and see what he's like, and got into him that way.
Yeah, I got into him through. Speaking of being a gamer, I'm probably one of the small minority, but there used to be this game on the iOS platforms called Infinity Blade, which was like a
Yeah,
fantasy
yeah, I
slash.
know. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and he wrote novels in that world, and
Did he
so
really?
yeah, and so
Oh,
I was a fan of the games, and so I was like, oh, there's books, I'll read them, and then it's like, oh, this is pretty fun, and then I find out he's a proper author, and so I'm the small subset that got in through this now defunct iOS game series.
yeah. Infinity Blade, because that was by Epic as well. That was by the people who did Gears of War as well, which was kind of a turn up. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, but yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know he did those.
Mhm.
I kind of like reading some. I got really into I really like Dragon Age, the video game series, and
Mhm.
the lead writer of those wrote some books set in the Dragon
Oh,
Age universe, and I read all those, and I was like, these are good actually. I quite like them, even though I kind of knew that they weren't at the same time, but they were at the same time as well. It was weird,
yeah.
I was enjoying them. Um, so you're very well read then. You've been reading fantasy all of your life, I presume.
Yeah, pretty much. It's been a mainstay throughout, when I was younger, it was, Chronicles of Narnia is what my parents were raising me up on. And then, you know, Lord of the Rings, I got introduced to Peter Jackson's movies and
Yeah.
then, had to read the books for myself. And so
Mhm.
um, it's what I always end up coming back to.
Sure, perfect. And when did you want to become a writer?
I think in some form or another, I've always had that desire. I think, when I was maybe my first memory of ever trying to write something, I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and I was playing a little like a Fire Emblem video game, which is like a strategy
Yeah.
based game. And I took a little sheet of paper and I decided, you know what? I think the characters, they should be doing something else. I like some of the villains. They're too cool. I'm going to make them, on the good guys' side because I want to have them.
Right.
And so I wrote my own little story. It was just like one page, and half the page was like a crayon drawing of, like a fight happening.
Yeah.
And that kind of started this, lifelong, I like stories. I want to tell them in some form or another. And so I used to, in primary school, always tell my friends, yeah, I'm working on a book. And then, really it would be like, I would, write a paragraph and say, that's a chapter, that's good. It would be a while until I ever, really learned to buckle down and, discipline myself to write something as a proper novel in its own right.
But what spurred that? When was the moment where you were like, well, you know what, I'm going to give this a proper focus?
Yeah. So um, before this book, The Empire's Lion, um, I was in college. I was, like 20 or so, and it was during a summer break, and I was thinking, all right, what am I going to be doing, this break? Yeah. I've, spent a couple previous summers just on video games or just hanging out. And I said, I should really finally write a book. And so that's when I buckled down. And that book, I actually don't remember if I properly finished the first draft or if I got to just 99% on the first draft. I remember I got to the end and I thought, all right, I really love this, but my skill set just isn't quite there yet. And it's a first novel, like first novel in that sense. And so I put that aside and I said, all right, I'm gonna grow my skill set. I'm gonna write some other stuff. And then more time passed, and then the pandemic started, and it was like, all right, well, I'm at home. What am I gonna do now? It's
Yeah.
like thinking, and it was like, all right, I'll try to write another one.
Yeah.
And this is another opportunity. And I had just this really basic seed of an idea, and I can't actually tell you because it spoils a major plot twist in the book, but I thought about that and I thought, yeah, I can run with that. And so I started building out the world a bit. I had these different moments appearing in my head as I thought, all right, that's something I want to work towards.
Mhm.
And I did not intend for it to be as long as it did, but
Yes, that was going to be one of my questions in a while, actually.
yeah, the story kind of needed to be where it was.
Yeah.
And things lined up in a really cool way because I ended up picking up an advanced review copy of this other author's work. His name was Michael McClellan, and he had just published his debut fantasy. And I was like the first person to put up my advanced review on Goodreads. And so he messaged me saying, hey, thank you. And we started a little conversation. Turned out we were living in the same general area. And I was like, hey, could I ask you a writing question? Got coffee. And then I kind of pitched him the basic idea. And he said, you know what? That's a cool idea. Are you writing every day? And I was like, no, I'm not. He said, all right, well, and he gave me the kick. And so
That's
it
good.
took another year and a half until I was, until last month when I published it. But
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that can happen. That can happen with the first book, and it's
yeah.
great to have that kind of a mentor kind of thing as well there to kind of teach you the ropes a little bit and all that kind of stuff. But obviously, because writing the thing is a very solitary
Hmm.
experience, and especially when you write it in a pandemic as well.
Yeah.
It's one of the books that I wrote in the pandemic is called In Solitude Shadow, and I just
Mm.
and that was the theme of the book as well. Afterwards, I wasn't really thinking about it when I was writing it, but then after I finished, I was like, man, this pandemic has really informed this book in a lot of ways, right? Um, so before we start talking about uh, Empire's Lion, that first book, that you've written
Mhm.
that you got 99% done, perhaps. Would you ever go back to that one? Because I know with when we talk about Brandon Sanderson before, his Way of the Kings book, which is now his main series,
Mhm.
that was his first book, which he shelved and then went back
Yeah,
to after he finished writing the Wheel of Time book. So he was like, I'm ready to tackle this type of fantasy now. So is that, would you ever go back to it?
I absolutely would. Yeah, and I still have a like a um, like a dock in the cloud that once in a while I'll be out walking and something will click in the back of my mind and I'll think, yeah, all right, when I go back to it, that's how I'm going to fix that one issue. And so it's absolutely something that I'll be returning to. There's even there's some parts of it that I can see myself, even when I was writing Empire's Lion, kind of testing similar themes, some similar ideas, and kind of building up my understanding of it so that when I do go back to that other book, I can do the story the justice that I think it deserves.
Yeah. So yeah. So okay, Empire's Lion. It's the Imperial Adept book one. So we know
Mhm.
there's going to be more. Uh, it's debut fantasy. It's epic fantasy. And if in doubt, just hold up that book again. Just side on. We can see.
Yeah, I
So
can give
yes,
you a side profile.
the Kindle version is 849 pages. So this is epic in every sense of the word. How many words is that?
That is 220,000, just about.
220. So we're in the realms of Brandon Sanderson, Robert Jordan, George Martin kind of realms. First time off of that is seriously impressive. When you started sitting down to write this, in your mind, how big did you think it was going to be?
Roughly, maybe like half that. I was thinking, okay, let's just think of bare minimums. And I was like, all right, 100,000 words. As long as it's past that, that's like, a fine epic, maybe not like an epic fantasy, but a fine fantasy debut. I started writing it, and because I work from an outline, I'm noting, how many words I'm in when I hit certain story beats. And I'm thinking, oh no, this might be more like, 100, 25,000. That's fine. 150,000. Hey, that's a good length. I'd be happy with 150,000. And then I finished the first draft and it's 190,000 words. And I'm thinking, well, that's okay because I know that I got a bit of a false start with the beginning. So I'm going to need to cut a lot out,
Yes,
work that.
that doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, never. You never have to throw away 30,000 words of work.
Neither do I. That
Yeah.
never happens to me because that's the thing as well. Like I whenever I finish a draft and it goes off to my publisher and it goes to development edits, it always gets bigger,
Mm-hmm.
right? Always, and it's like nothing ever gets thrown away. Some things might get tweaked or changed, but it never gets smaller. It grows
Mm-hmm.
because I always write. I'm always like, right. I'm always like, I won't go too big just in case. So on my latest book, I've gone big, right? I've gone right. You know what? I'm just gonna go big, take all this thing on what they're always saying to me, like expand this, expand this. I've done
Yeah.
all that, and I'm fully expecting that it will still grow to beyond even bigger once it's gone. And my publisher keeps saying, "Don't worry, we can cut things out if we need to." And I'm like, "It's nothing's getting cut out."
Yeah, exactly. I was looking so hard as I was doing it. And after I sent it to, some beta readers and they sent feedback, and I realized from them, even things I didn't realize that I have to expand. They're saying, we're kind of missing something on this, or, I'd like to understand this more. And then the other thing that happened was, because it takes a while for beta readers to get back to you on something this big, I wrote a prequel novel, which is a more reasonable length. It's like 95,000 words.
Right.
Um,
The
and
size of a normal novel.
yeah, I give that away on my newsletter from my website, which has been great. But because it was a prequel, I realized, all right, you know, I need to add stuff now to the Empire's Lion to, make it consistent, to reference some events that happen.
Sure.
Um, and so that required me to add, a little bit more. And so then ends up at like 220,000 words. And I think Yep, that's how long it is. I'm not going to be able to cut it down.
Yeah, yeah. Well, some of these things are crafted in that kind of way where it's like, everything counts, right?
Mhm.
There's nothing. There's sometimes like, some people might write. I know people that have written things where they've written extra stuff and they've taken the extra stuff out completely and it's not made any difference to the book, and then they've used that in a different story, or they've used it in a spin-off or whatever. And some people, obviously like me and you, we write stuff and it's all just like we can't get rid of it, which is
Yeah.
a blessing and a curse, but that's okay. So tell us the premise of the book.
Yeah. So the premise is so our main character is this young woman named Reva, and she's the Imperial Adept. She's the one on the cover. And basically, an adept is an elite magic warrior in this empire called Lazara, which is sort of loosely based on ancient Rome. And the way the adepts work is that, um, for some reason that no one knows, but eventually you discover as the reader in bits and pieces, if you're Lazaran, you can't do magic. So this entire military corps is built off of essentially foreign-born warriors like Reva.
Right.
And so Reva, through various instances in her life, ended up becoming an adept for Lazara, and she has fire magic, which is really rare and powerful. And so she's, on the trajectory for just an amazing career. Everyone's expecting great things. So when the book opens, we see her. She's on her first solo mission. She's working with, the legionnaires on the ground. And then all goes to hell. She makes a bad call, and now she's got dozens of people dead on her watch, effectively. And she's looking at, even if she gets to continue her career, she's it's not looking good for her. And she gets sort of thrown a line by this higher up in the military, who says, all right, look, we're running another campaign to Talanus, which is the land of her birth, which she's not supposed to go back to, right? This is, for obvious reasons, the Empire doesn't want adepts going back to their homelands.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But she said, all right, look, this kingdom has always been a tough nut to crack. We think, maybe you could do some good stuff for us in terms of, visibility, a symbol of unity sort of thing. If you want another chance, I'll put in a good word for you. You're going to conquer the land of your birth effectively. And that's kind of the basic setup for Reva's storyline. The other character that you're following is one of the leaders of the Talanisti resistance, effectively. So the story is jumping back and forth between Reva, who's trying to conquer this kingdom, and Avi, who's trying to defend it. And you're seeing their story get more and more intense. Avi has a weapon that is anti-magic, effectively. So he's the perfect counterpoint to who Reva is, and a real threat to her. So that's what's driving a lot of the tension.
Excellent. Sounds good. I like the angle of these mages coming from a different place to fight for a different country, having to go and fight their own place of birth, and how that kind of plays into it. It's an interesting angle. So this is book one. How many? And we then as a prequel on the that's free on your newsletter, and the links for that for people that are watching and listening. The links for that will be in the show notes, so do check that out. So this is book one. When is book two coming out, and how many books do you think it's going to be?
So book two, I've said I'm targeting for June. We'll see. Things have been a bit rough lately in terms of just, COVID and such, life gets in the way, but I'm still targeting for within the next few months, maybe this summer, releasing book two, which unfortunately I haven't settled on a title yet, so I can't reveal that.
Right. And how's the writing going on it? Is it going well? Are you?
It is going well.
Yeah.
It's sequels. I've never done a sequel before, and it's kind of challenging in its own right. Having to both it needs to be different, but also familiar. It has to take the story forward, but also, not just feel like you're repeating what happened in the first book. So
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot about writing as I go through it. Um, and there's a lot that's getting revealed about the world, about the setting, and so that's exciting.
And how are you expanding the scope of this one beyond, like, the first book is the two POV characters? Is there more POV characters in this one, or is it just
well, there are more POV characters in Empire's Lion as well, but
right?
for simplicity's sake, I kept it
Just
to
I got
those
the
two.
name too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but in a sense, yeah, the scope is expanding, and that's been another one of the challenges. Is I've actually had to change how I'm writing it, because with Empire's Lion, I pretty much just wrote it start to finish. It was, I have my outline, and so it was like, all right, scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, and there was a bit of shuffling, but more or less what you're reading is the order I wrote it in. With the sequel, I kept running into this issue where I'd write, a couple scenes from one character's POV, and then, I'd have to jump to another one that's not just a different character, but entirely different place in the world, different plot thread, and I would lose so much momentum just reacquainting myself with what's going on. So
Yeah, that is tricky too, because like I have two series, one which is just first person, so it's from one person's point of view, so I don't have that trouble.
mhm.
It's fine, but I have another one, the epic fantasy one, which is multiple POV, and you're almost like you're telling, until those threads meet each other, it's almost as if you are telling mini stories inside this larger story, and it can be hard then to. And I was kind of, I've been writing it in chapter order, and in this one, but I'm coming towards the end of it now, and I'm thinking, when I come back to the next one, I wonder if I'll just write these threads separately.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm doing with this one.
And how is that working for you?
It's been actually doing. It's been much better on in terms of
Right.
productivity, in terms of keeping my head on straight in regards to what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'd say definitely give it a shot. It's been working for me.
Yeah, maybe I will. But the other side of it is that I kind of like them taking a break from one character for a
Mm-hmm.
little while and
Yeah.
going off and doing something else. But that's the craft, isn't it? You have to try different things and see. So how many books do you think the series is going to be altogether?
So what I'm saying is that it's going to be sort of a core trilogy. So you're going to have, The Empire's Lion, and then there's going to be book 2 and book 3.
Right.
And that core trilogy will stand on its own in a sense, but I will be writing some more like shorter books, kind of like the prequel, which either they might be other sort of prequel type stories, like giving the background to certain characters, how they ended up here.
Yeah.
Because there are some really cool characters that kind of just, they walk onto the scene, and I don't have, it's already a pretty long book. I don't have the page space to tell you all
Right.
about their crazy pasts. So
Yeah.
There's going to be a fewer shorter books like that, while not necessarily to understand the core story, if people are interested, they can read those, and I'm excited for that.
Sounds great. Sounds great. You'll have to come back on at another point later on in the year when you've got another couple of them released and out there as well, and see how you're getting on and what the plans are next. For
Yeah.
people that are watching and listening, where are you mentioned your newsletter before, where are the best places to find you on the internet?
Sure. So my website, nathantudor.com, is, you can never go wrong with that. That's where you can sign up to my newsletter. I have a blog that, I occasionally update, sort of free form. I've got something up there about kind of telling the story of what I told you about how it ended up this long, and the pros and cons of that. On Twitter, it's at Nath Tudor Books, and I have a Facebook page as well. I'll give you the link for that. So I do post on social media. I generally tell people, if you want to be up to date, the newsletter is the best, because
Sure.
I'm still learning social media, but I love writing my mailing list, because I can get into detail on things. I can keep people up to date. So
Yeah. Perfect. Great stuff. Well, thank you so much for coming on so early in the morning. And you can go and enjoy the sunshine for the rest of the day.
Well, you too. Well, thank you for having me. It's been great.
No problem at all. And best of luck for 2022. And for everyone who's been watching with us till the end, please do and go check out Nathan's links. They will be in the show notes below. And thank you for staying with us till the end. Until next time.